Think about every great empire in history. Rome, invaded by barbarians, sacked, conquered. The Mongol Empire, fragmented, invaded, absorbed by others. The Ottoman Empire, defeated militarily, partitioned by victors. The Spanish Empire, colonies seized by rivals, homeland invaded. Every empire that fell was invaded, conquered, defeated on its own soil. Except one. The British Empire ruled a quarter of the planet, 500 million subjects, 13 million square miles. And it collapsed without a single foreign soldier setting foot on British soil in conquest. No invasion of Britain, no conquest of London, no occupation of England. The British Isles remained independent, sovereign, unconquered throughout the entire existence and its collapse. How is that possible? How does the largest empire in human history dissolve without being militarily defeated? Rome fell to barbarian invasion. Constantinople fell to Ottoman conquest. The Aztec Empire fell to Spanish invasion. But Britain? Britain defeated Napoleon, survived 2 world wars, repelled every invasion attempt for 1,000 years. Yet the empire collapsed anyway. The conventional answer, World War II exhausted Britain. Nationalist movements demanded independence. The empire became too expensive. All true, but incomplete. Because those explanations don't address the fundamental question. Why couldn't Britain fight to keep it? Spain fought for centuries to hold its empire and lost. France fought brutal wars in Algeria and Indochina and lost. Portugal fought for decades in Angola and Mozambique and lost. They fought and lost because they were defeated militarily. But Britain? Britain wasn't defeated. Britain chose to leave. Or did it? This is the paradox of the British Empire.
The last successful invasion, 1066. October 14th, 1066. The Battle of Hastings. William the Conqueror defeated King Harold II. Norman forces conquered England. That was the last time a foreign power successfully invaded and conquered Britain, nearly 1,000 years ago. For the next millennium, Britain remained unconquered. Failed invasions. 1588, Spanish Armada, defeated. 1690s, French invasion attempts, failed. 1797, French landing in Wales, repelled. 1804, 1805, Napoleon's invasion plans, abandoned. 1940, Operation Sea Lion, Nazi invasion, never attempted. Every major European power tried. Every one failed. Why Britain was unconquerable? Geography. The English Channel, just 21 miles of water at its narrowest point. But those 21 miles were enough. Invading Britain required naval superiority, defeating the Royal Navy. Transport capacity, moving armies across water. Secure landing zones, establishing beachheads. Supply lines, maintaining invasion across the channel. Almost impossible. The Royal Navy, the most powerful in the world for 3 centuries, made invasion suicidal. Napoleon assembled 200,000 troops at Boulogne, never crossed the channel. Hitler conquered all of continental Europe, never attempted invading Britain. The paradox. So here's the paradox. Britain was militarily secure, protected by geography, defended by the world's most powerful navy.
World War I, the first catastrophe. August 1914, Britain entered World War I as the world's financial hegemon. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. London was the world's financial center. Britain was the largest creditor nation.
lending money globally, financing infrastructure, dominating international trade. Then came 4 years of industrial-scale war. The financial bloodletting. Britain's national debt exploded from £650 million in 1914 to £7.4 billion in 1919. More than 10 times larger in 4 years. How? Britain borrowed massively, especially from the United States, to finance the war. Munitions, weapons, food, raw materials, all purchased on credit. Britain entered World War I as the world's largest creditor. It emerged as a debtor. The human cost. 886,000 British dead, 2 million wounded. An entire generation, the best and brightest, killed in the trenches. But the empire survived. Barely. World War II, the fatal blow. September 1939, Britain declared war on Germany again. By 1945, the damage was catastrophic. Total national debt, £21 billion, equivalent to over 75,000 metric tons of gold. More than 2.5 times the combined gold reserves of every country on Earth. Shock moment number 1. Britain's debt was literally unpayable. There wasn't enough gold in the world to cover it. What Britain lost. Beyond debt, Britain had lost overseas investments, sold to pay for the war. Centuries of accumulated wealth, gone. Industrial capacity, converted to war production, damaged by bombing, outdated compared to America. Merchant fleet, decimated by German U-boats, 11.7 million tons of shipping lost. Currency reserves, depleted buying American weapons and supplies. Economic independence, dependent on American.
The empire was always unprofitable. Here's what they don't teach you. The British Empire was never economically rational, even at its peak. As early as 1880, the British Empire was producing an economic return lower than investment in Britain itself, while to preserve it, the British taxpayer was paying 2.5 times more for defense than citizens of other developed countries. Read that again. 65 years before World War II, the empire was already costing more than it generated. Why maintain it then? If the empire was unprofitable, why keep it? 3 reasons. 1. Prestige. Empire meant global power, international status, national pride. 2. Strategic. Naval bases, trade routes, resources access. 3. Inertia. Centuries of imperial ideology, vested interests, political momentum. The majority of the English people cheerfully and even proudly shouldered a tax bill for an empire from which they derived little economic benefit. Empire wasn't about profit. It was about power. But power costs money, and Britain was running out. The structural problem. Empires are expensive. Governing 13.71 million square miles and some 538 million people came at a substantial price. Every colonial territory required military presence, suppressing resistance, administrative apparatus, British officials, courts, police, infrastructure, railways, ports, telegraph lines, economic subsidies when territories didn't pay for themselves. The larger the empire, the higher the costs. And Britain's empire was enormous. The overextension. By the early 20th century, Britain faced threats from multiple directions. Germany, challenging naval supremacy, industrial competition. Russia, threatening India through Central Asia, the Great Game. United States, surpassing Britain economically. Japan, rising power in Asia. France, colonial rival in Africa and Asia. Britain couldn't defend everywhere simultaneously. The Royal Navy, once dominant,
August 1947, losing the crown jewel. August 15th, 1947, India became independent. 400 million people, 60% of the empire's population, the crown jewel, gone. Why so fast? Not because Indian nationalists militarily defeated Britain, but because Britain couldn't afford to stay. Maintaining control required military force Britain didn't have money for. Occupation would cost billions, trigger civil war, require decades of commitment. Britain escaped. The domino effect. Once India went, the rest followed rapidly. Burma, January 1948. Ceylon, Sri Lanka, February 1948. Palestine, May 1948. Britain withdrew, unable to maintain order. By 1948, 3 years after victory in World War II, Britain had lost half its empire. The pattern. Watch what happened. Territories Britain abandoned quickly. Low strategic value, high cost. India, Burma, Ceylon, Palestine. Territories Britain fought to keep. High strategic economic value. Malaya, 1948 to 1960, 12-year counterinsurgency. Kenya, 1952 to 1960, brutal suppression of Mau Mau. Cyprus, 1955 to 1959, torture, detention camps. Aden, 1963 to 1967, Fort Morbot fingernail factory. Britain fought where profitable or strategic, left quickly where costs exceeded benefits. Not defeat, triage. The Suez Crisis, 1956. October-November 1956, the moment that proved the empire was over. Egypt's President Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal. Britain, France, and Israel invaded to retake it. America ordered them to withdraw. When Britain hesitated, America threatened. Economic sanctions, selling pounds, crashing the currency, blocking IMF support. Britain's invasion was swiftly condemned. When the UN threatened sanctions, economic panic set in, causing tens of millions of pounds to be lost from Britain's reserves. Britain withdrew, humiliated.
The Roman comparison. Everyone knows how Rome fell. Barbarian invasions, internal decay, finally conquered in 476 AD. But here's the thing. Rome's fall took centuries. The empire didn't collapse suddenly. It eroded gradually, lost territories piece by piece, contracted slowly. And even after the Western Empire fell in 476, life continued largely unchanged for most people. Britain's collapse was similar, but faster. Not sudden conquest, gradual abandonment accelerated by bankruptcy. The 3 ways empires end. History shows 3 ways empires collapse. Type 1, military conquest. Aztec Empire, Spanish invasion. Inca Empire, Spanish conquest. Byzantine Empire, Ottoman conquest, 1453. Type 2, fragmentation. Mongol Empire, divided among heirs. Alexander's Empire, split after his death. Carolingian Empire, partition treaties. Type 3, economic collapse. Spanish Empire, bankruptcy despite silver. Soviet Union, economic failure, 1991. British Empire, debt, overextension, unsustainability. Britain is type 3, an empire that collapsed economically while remaining militarily undefeated on home soil. Why this matters? Military strength doesn't equal imperial sustainability. Britain had world's most powerful navy, nuclear weapons from 1952, permanent UN Security Council seat, professional military. But it didn't matter, because Britain couldn't afford to use that strength globally. The formula. Empire sustainability requires revenue from empire greater than cost of maintaining empire. For Britain, pre-1880, revenue greater than cost, empire profitable. 1880 to 1914, revenue approximately equal cost, break even, justified by prestige. 1914 to 1945, cost greater than revenue, war makes deficit catastrophic. Post-1945, cost greater than revenue, completely unsustainable. Once the formula flips permanently, empire collapse is inevitable, invasion or not.
the modern American parallel. Today, the United States maintains 750 plus military bases in 80 countries, $800 plus billion annual defense spending, global military commitments, $34 trillion national debt, 130% of GDP. Does this sound familiar? Strategic overextension.
The paradox resolved. So, the British Empire was never invaded. So why did it collapse? The answer: because invasion isn't necessary for imperial collapse. Empires don't end when enemies conquer the homeland. They end when maintaining the empire becomes economically impossible. The three-stage collapse. Britain's imperial collapse followed 3 stages. Stage 1, structural weakness, 1880 to 1914. Empire already costing more than it generated. Strategic overextension, rising competitors, but sustainable through national wealth and prestige. Stage 2, catastrophic damage, 1914 to 1945. 2 world wars drain resources. Debt explodes beyond payability. Economic independence lost, but still intact territorially. Stage 3, rapid abandonment, 1945 to 1997. India lost 1947, unaffordable to keep. Strategic territories abandoned, too expensive. African decolonization, systematic triage. Final territories return, lease expired, indefensible. No invasion required, just financial mathematics. What Britain really lost? Britain never lost a war for its homeland, but Britain lost economic independence, indebted to America. Financial dominance, pound replaced by dollar. Industrial leadership, surpassed by America, Germany, Japan. Global military presence, withdrew from east of Suez. Imperial territories, decolonization, 1947 to 1997. Great power status, became America's junior partner. Britain remained sovereign, but ceased being an empire. The unconquered homeland. Today, Britain remains independent, democratic, prosperous, relatively, culturally influential, militarily capable, nuclear power, but it's not an empire. The British Isles were never conquered, but the British Empire still collapsed. Because empires aren't defined by controlling the homeland. They're defined by controlling other territories. And when controlling other territories becomes unaffordable, the empire ends, conquest or not. The universal lesson. Every empire that ever existed faced the same equation. Cost of empire versus revenue from empire. When costs permanently exceed revenue,